Back to Ghost. All the way across forecheck. In front. They score! Patrick tips it home. It's a 4-3 hockey game as the kid seems to be enjoying it on the top power play unit. 3-point game for Patrick.
Period.com presents the O&B Puckcast, episode number 60. I'm your host, Isaiah, and the Flyers are on trial right now until U.S. Thanksgiving, some might say. We're going to talk about that and many other things, and we have a special guest coming up, Jordan Hall from NBC Sports Philly. He'll be on with us directly. We got some ground to cover. Let's go with the panel. Chef B, how are you, man?
Good. Little confused at what identity the Flyers are, but I'm sure we'll get to something like that tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And from Brotherly Pod and Puck, National Pod and Puck, Dan, a Flyer fan.
Hello.
Hello. You're bringing the usual high energy self here. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. It's well, you know, it's on this team you're like the F-13, but we value you as a top liner. Don't kid yourself. And from the fourth period.com, Anthony DeMarco.
Greetings from the Great White North.
Yes, don't forget, he's up in Canada. Got a different perspective up there. All right. Gents, Flyers are 3-2-1 since our last show, but I'll tell you, it's just really been a roller coaster. I mean, you think about it, this is a team, and they're 6-5-2, 14 points in 13 games. They're fifth in the Metro. Last game, well, actually, last two games, they have it back-to-back. They went to shootouts. One game versus the Devils, they win. And then versus Toronto, they lost the shootout. And, but there are some numbers we can break down later today that will give us a sense. But, gents, let's talk about some of these games that have occurred since we last spoke. The Flyers went into Chicago and got a 4-1 victory. And probably, Chef, you think about that game, if you saw that one, G and JVR get off the schneid. Joel Farabee does everything but score. If it weren't for replays, he would have scored 5 goals. No, but, and the thing was, Kevin Hayes was just terrific defensive presence. And also, you know, Elliott had a good game that night. So that was a feel-good victory because the Flyers pretty much controlled that game.
Yeah, it was interesting. You saw how important, like, I think after that game, you saw the value that Kevin Hayes actually brings to the team. I know a lot of people said we overpaid, and I said we overpaid too, but we jumped up in penalty killing. You know, it's been a hell of a lot better this year, and Farabee's come along faster than I thought he was going to. When you were done that game, you felt, okay, maybe they turned the corner. You know, maybe this will be a team that's not going to take a step forward and 2 steps back. But 2 games later, we saw that wasn't the case.
Yeah. And before we get to that, we got to give the Flyers credit for coming back in kind of a wild, uncharacteristic contest versus the Columbus Blue Jackets on a Saturday night. Anthony, that was a game that I predicted that Kevin Hayes would really play a big role because he's a hard to play against kind of guy, and he has a really great presence on the penalty kill against a Columbus team that still, in terms of the skaters they still have on their roster, is still a challenge. And the Flyers showed the kind of pushback led by Kevin Hayes that night with he had the shorthanded goal?
Yeah, in the third period.
Yeah, and they just took off. I think they scored 5 goals in a row and really blew them out.
Yeah, well, that was a good game for a lot of reasons. Van Riemsdyk had the 2 goals, I believe, both on the power play, or at least one on the power play. Gossespierre had his only goal of the year. So that was kind of the game where, to Chef's point, where to piggyback off of the win against Chicago, it seemed like almost everything was coming together. And then, obviously, Kevin Hayes gets his 4th goal of the season with that great individual effort shorthanded. And it was like, okay, a lot of it maybe had to do with Korpisalo, coming apart in the third stanza there. And I thought for a lot of reasons that was one of the Flyers, more leaky games in the defensive zone. But, the feeling after that game, and I believe that brought them to 4-3-1 or 4-2-1. I forget exactly what it was. But there was just so much positivity surrounding this game. And then, again, it was almost like it came crashing down after such a high the very next night.
Yeah, and Dan, we're going to let you handle 2 games because there's only so much we can dwell on. With the Islanders game, the Flyers lost 5-3. The game was nowhere near that close as the Flyers got some garbage goals. And also, the next game in Pittsburgh, 7-1. It was never close. The Flyers were down 4-0 and 5-0. And what are some of the bones we can pick through? In 2 games that looked so much like last year, it really drove a lot of fans to the brink.
Yeah, and I was one of them. It was such a Dave Haxtell team. Going back to a couple weeks ago when they played Edmonton and Dallas, they lost those games, but they were playing a very, very good system. Their team defense was great. They were playing a strong game. They just weren't scoring goals. And that has really fallen apart here as the season continues. And the Islanders and Penguins game, especially the Penguins game, were proof of that. The team defense just wasn't there. They were a very leaky team. They're still not scoring a lot of goals. And, their overall defense as a whole fell apart. And it has been kind of rough going trying to right that ship.
Yeah. I mean, some of the lowlights from those games, Carter Hart just not being able to figure it out, gets pulled, not ready for prime time right now. He did come back in subsequent games, but sticking with the Islanders game, Travis Sanheim softer than Charmin in the corner versus Cole Bardreau, and what started a little bit of a tailspin for him. We'll talk about that. And he's rebounding, but that was a really bad look. And unfortunately, Dan, Sam Morin's just a guy that needs playing time. And subsequent to the Pittsburgh game, he was sent down for conditioning for 2 weeks. And he definitely needed that. And because I'm not going to kill Sam for playing poorly in that game. He did play poorly, but listen, you guys played 20 games in 3 years, in 2 years, 3 years?
Played 5 at the end of last season and 1 against the Islanders this year. 6 games in the last calendar year, right. Not including the preseason. And, he looked fine during preseason for what it's worth. And then he sat for, 10 games or whatever it was and came in and, again, the overall team wasn't great, and the Shane Gostisbehere pinch that Matt Barzal blew past him, it is what it is. They could have done that to anybody. But, again, it's hard to defend Sam Morin at this point, and I have to be realistic and say that he has not looked good. But, back with Lehigh, he's going to get, a couple weeks down there and a chance to right the ship and get called back up. Hopefully he gets some playing time and it's called back up, and it's not just, a reassignment to come up and sit in the box for another 4 weeks before he gets a chance. But, hopefully he gets, an extended look at the NHL at some point this year.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, Chef. I just don't see that happening for Sam. We'll have to monitor that. It's not the biggest issue with the team right now, because I wish I could go on and on about the 7-1 humiliation the Flyers suffered at the hands of the Penguins, but what's there to talk about? It's just one of those games, especially after the Islander game. Do you know the thing that really ticked me off? There was 6 or 7 seconds left in the game. Carter Hart, and I talked about this on Disciples of Ed podcast. I was on with those guys. Carter Hart, coming off that performance where he gets pulled in the island, was 6 or 7 seconds away from having a shutout period, trying to build a little momentum. And the Flyers had a coverage breakdown, and they couldn't even do that, and Pittsburgh got a goal. And it just, I think that ticked me off as much as the 7-1 score. Chef, what are your comments?
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting blown out and it's that bad, and it's obviously that bad, there's nothing you could sit there and say, you want to take one thing away. And if it was one thing, it was like, okay, our future goalie, our future of the franchise is going to have, hopefully get a shutout period and get a little confidence back. So, and then to see that laziness, because it's 7 seconds, like you said, 7 seconds. Well, that's, it takes 3 seconds to score a goal if you have a very skilled player in this league anymore. It's just unacceptable. It was embarrassing. I kept flicking back and forth because I watched the game in pieces. I would pause it and watch something else and then flick back from my DVR and then sit there and watch it. And I would get so mad I'd have to pause. I could only take that game in doses. Especially, you can't do this to me in one calendar season. The Eagles in one calendar week. Eagles lose to Dallas and then Pittsburgh beats the Flyers. I was mortified this week.
Yeah, well, that was tough. But I didn't know that was Dallas week. But
no, well, in the same couple weeks, it's too much.
Yeah. Well, football games are more devastating. I understand. It takes a longer time to get over.
No, it's the rivalry I hate.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, if you're talking from a rivalry standpoint, yeah, it was a rough couple weeks there. We'll give that a little leeway. But Anthony, the Flyers snapped right into action from a front office standpoint and called up Terrell Goulbourne to try and stem the tide. Oh no, I'm sorry, gents. I'm sorry. That was last year. I can't believe I messed that up. No, the Flyers did not do that. The Flyers demoted Misha Vorobiev and Sam Moran, the aforementioned one, for a conditioning assignment. They call up Phil Myers on defense, German Rupsov to play center, and Carson Chwerinsky already on his second tour of duty with the big club. Anthony, what did you make from those moves from the standpoint of how these guys fit in the lineup, and also, maybe more importantly, the message behind that?
I mean, I don't want to say they're meaningless because I feel like Phil Myers looks like he belongs, and he very much is an everyday NHL defenseman. And Rubtsov, even though he struggled early in the game against the Devils, he settled in nicely. And I always liked Chwerinsky's game and thought he was only sent down in the first place because the Flyers were in a desperate search of offense. But basically what this tells me is that the Flyers are trying to do anything to spark this team. But unfortunately, and Dan and I have talked about at length on Brotherly Pod over the past few weeks, is that these moves will not really mean much until the top guys in Voracek and Giroux and Shane Gostisbehere start performing on a more consistent level. Giroux was more effective in the past game, and I kind of give him a bit of leeway because he's had to switch back to center where he's clearly not as comfortable at this stage in his career. Yeah. And he scored a goal back on the left side on the power play. But they're in a desperate search of offense, especially with Lawton and Patrick out, Voracek, only coming around in spurts, and Gostisbehere pretty much non-existent in the offensive zone. But I like the players. For the most part, I think that Myers and Chwerinsky are everyday NHLers, and Rubtsov can hang. But at the end of the day, I don't see these as moves that will move the needle very much.
No, I think Myers has the potential to. Rubtsov, I think he's just until they figure out what to do at center. With apparently it was revealed today, Shunkaturi has a shoulder problem as to why he's not taking faceoffs. A lot of people, including myself, had speculated that he had a hand or a wrist problem. Not the case. So Rubtsov's only playing 8 minutes a night the first couple games he got called up. That's not going to cut it. A player like that who should be at least a third-line player they really has to play more. So we'll talk about that for sure. But Dan, then you have the back-to-back shootout games with New Jersey and the Maple Leafs, respectively. And I think, it was a little bit of, encouraging. I think those moves that were made were also a message to the squad, like, we're ready to make changes if need be because of how bad those games were. So in New Jersey, the penalty kill let them down, but it still was there for them to get the victory in New Jersey. I thought they deserved it. They outplayed them. And, of course, everybody's going to remember that Couturier uses a Forsberg move in the shootout, also the game where Joel Farabee finally gets his first NHL goal.
Yeah, and you got to really respect what Fletcher and Lehman have done here. They are not taking any crap this year from anybody. They are, more than willing to shake the team up to, try and elicit a response from them. And, the fact that they have been very patient with some of their prospects, they've been giving Farabee every chance to make it happen, and it finally did. And for real this time. And, yeah, it was a good game. It was a typical Flyers-Devils game in the sense that it bored me half to death for more than most of the game, but overall it was a big win. And, hopefully this was the roster shakeup that keeps them on their toes for a little while.
Yeah, hopefully. Although there are some big questions that we're going to address a little bit later with our special guest, Jordan Hall, about what may portend come around Thanksgiving or December 1st, what have you. Chef, the Flyers did fall to the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday in the shootout. It was like 11 rounds. Crazy. The Flyers came out, again, to donating the first 10 minutes, as Ron Hextall used to say, and then they pretty much had their way with the Maple Leafs. I think they came back, the Maple Leafs came back in the third, were a little more competitive, had better chances. But this is a Flyers game to win. And I noticed on this, Chef, Ivan Provorov is on the first power play unit. Ghost was taken off. I wonder if that's a sign of some changes in the offing.
Well, I see Dan all the time online posting about, in particular, like certain whipping boys on the Flyers team. We don't even have to name them. Everybody knows who the hell they are. The funny thing is, Sanheim, he'll say, like, Sanheim will get a free ride or whatever. Ghost hasn't been very good. And I feel like finally somebody is holding him accountable as of last game. I said before, at the beginning of the season that he could possibly be the trade chip. I took a little heat for it because if Sam Morin does pan out and if Philip Myers is coming up, so there's a logjam of defensemen. So something has to go, and this could be the point where, okay, well, we're shopping around. They could be shopping around maybe eventually to make moves later on, but I mean he's got a reasonable contract for the next couple years, and terms are good for that. So if he's not going to get better, I just want to see at least Myers or even Moran after he gets his conditioning stint. Don't bench him. Sit him out. I would love to see that. Show the vets that this shit's not going to float anymore.
Well, the problem with that is if he is a genuine trade chip, I don't know if that is the wisest course. I mean, believe me, I hear what you're saying. It's just going to have to be handled very carefully depending on where Ghost is with the organization. Anthony, I just wanted to cover a couple things before we go to the TFP Rumor Mill segment for tonight. There was the whole thing with Sanheim a couple games in a row kind of turning and toppling down like a statue. For someone who has really good edges, has been a very good skater, that's a very kind of strange thing. And also, Farabee has moved up to play with Claude Giroux, and Voracek is now playing with Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, well, with Sanheim, I think I don't want to say it's growing pains because this is pretty much his third season with the team, but it's only his, his first full season entering with a coaching staff that's fully trusting him and not punishing him for every, miscue that he does. So I'm expecting there to be some growing pains with Sanheim in that respect. He plays the third most amount of minutes on the team in terms of defensemen at 2022. So he's playing tough minutes against, better competition than he has in the past, aside from last year when he was on the top pair with Provorov. But, these are growing pains, and even Alain Vigneault's comments said that, they're going to stick with it, and he's a good defenseman, and you got to learn to live with some mistakes. And as for the top line, it was bound to be broken up at some point. Van Riemsdyk, Giroux, and Voracek have kind of been non-factors for a large part at 5-on-5 at least. I think this is a potentially a good payoff here because, Voracek goes back with Hayes. They showed some signs of chemistry early in the season and going back into the into training camp and the preseason. And then you put Farabee up with Giroux and Van Riemsdyk. I worry about how that line will do on the defensive side of things. I find that Farabee, one of the only knocks on him lately has been, he kind of looks a bit lost in the defensive zone. And Voracek, for all intents and purposes, has been much stronger in the defensive zone, one of the few places that he's excelled in this game.
Yeah.
So besides that, I look forward to that top line and seeing what Farabee could do with Giroux. It wasn't a change that I was expecting. I thought it would go something more along the lines of switching Giroux and Hayes or switching Raffl and JVR. But, it can't hurt. It can't be any worse. So besides that, maybe there's some defensive miscues that may occur here, I don't see how it could be any worse than it already has.
Yeah. It's interesting. Jake Voracek, through quotes that were relayed by Sam Carchidi, was talking about his defense and how he gets a bad rap, and it compared it to a bowling ball. It just rolls and rolls. It doesn't have to happen on a nightly basis. It can just happen once every 10 games, but you get that picture. That's just the way it is. Voracek may save the goal with his back checking on Saturday, and he says, "I've been focusing on my defense this year. I think I've been pretty solid in that, and I still get bleep for playing bleepy defense. I just have to focus on myself and just do it in the games." It's really interesting because this year he is doing better from a shot metric standpoint. 5 years in a row, though, he's gotten worse. So the bowling ball is very difficult to stop, and I guess Voracek is attempting to do that. So we'll have to see. Very interesting quote by Jake. But Anthony, you have to go on assignment with the fourthperiod.com, and just before we get Jordan Hall on from NBC Sports Philly, we wanted to take you through the rumor mill and get the information for the faithful out there. What do you have for us tonight?
Well, in terms of the Flyers, we'll start off there. We keep talking about American Thanksgiving and where this team will be at then and what changes may occur. I spoke to a source today and asked specifically about that, and he said that he'd be shocked if the Flyers didn't ride the season out with Voracek and Giroux, no matter where they are at come American Thanksgiving. I'm not sure if that's in terms of just because they wouldn't be certain which direction they want to go in, or if it would just be simply too tough to move such hefty contracts mid-season. More so Jake Voracek than Claude Giroux. Both of them carry almost an identical cap hit of 8.2. Giroux slightly higher by like 50,000, I believe, but Voracek, I believe, has 5 years left, while Giroux has 3. And I think the biggest name that would be on the trade block in a scenario where the Flyers are going downward would be Shane Gostisbehere. You would hope that his value increased at that point in the season so they could get something of a substantial return. But then if they would head into the trade deadline as more sellers, I would expect guys like maybe Justin Braun to be on the market, a Tyler Pitlick, like depth players on expiring contracts. I don't think any of, let's say, quote-unquote core players would be in play because of just, too big of contracts to move mid-season. And then in terms of league-wide, teams are still in the exploring stages. It's rare that you see teams make substantial shakeups at this point. They're seeing what's available, and most teams want to wait another another 5 to 10 games and see what the rosters really look like. But, the usual suspects are out there. Pittsburgh and Edmonton in particular are looking for scoring and increased scoring, especially with some of them, relying on top-heavy players in McDavid and Draisaitl and Malkin and Crosby. So, yeah, besides that, it's pretty quiet. And to your point, Isaiah, we'll really start to see the balls get rolling league-wide here in a month or so.
Yeah, that's great, Anthony. I appreciate that.
All right, guys, take care. We'll talk soon.
All right, you got it. Dan, before we add Jordan here, any other thoughts that you have about what the Flyers have been doing or where they're at?
I just wish we would see more offense. There's a lot of players taking a lot of shots, and that's great and all, but they have to start scoring. The big guns, the JVRs, Van Riemsdyk, Giroux, Couturier is hurt, but for the most part, his shot seems okay because he's done quite a few lately. But, they are relying pretty much exclusively on connecting Lindblom to score goals. And that's great. I'm glad those two are carrying the team, but they need to start seeing scoring from other methods on a consistent basis. And I think once that starts happening, they'll be able to start winning some more games consistently.
Yeah. I mean, just a little update I got from Snow the goalie. Anthony Sanfilippo said, according to their internal metrics, I think Shane Gostisbehere only has 7 scoring chances all year, and that's out of 28 shots. Like what they would consider scoring chances. So that's probably why they moved him off the power play. But we'll talk a little bit more about that with Jordan. But yeah, I hear you. They have to have that kind of offensive power because they're going to have breakdowns during the season, and their goaltending is still, in my mind, shaky until one of these guys, particularly Carter Hart, gets established. And do we have Mr. Jordan Hall from NBC Sports Philly on the line?
Yes. How are you guys doing?
Terrific. I'm Isaiah. You're on with Dan and Chef. Well, Jordan, you have had the ability to watch this roller coaster Flyers team, and just if you could give us some general impressions, particularly after the double blowouts with the Islanders and the Penguins, maybe some thoughts about how they handled that, how they bounced back, and so forth.
I definitely thought they got refocused and got back to what they had been doing. We had seen them through that stretch before those 2 games, those nightmare games in New York and then Pittsburgh. They had really been playing Alain Vigneault's system to how he wants it, and they had controlled games. They maybe didn't have some of the best first periods, but they came on strong in second periods, and they played really well in the third, and to the point where they felt like they were outplaying teams even if they weren't getting a win in some of those games. But then you got those 2 clunkers where they just looked slow. They weren't forechecking. Just everything was a mess. I think they really got back to it over these past 2. To get 3 points, 3 out of 4 points in a back-to-back where you're in New Jersey Friday night, then you come home and you play a pretty talented, skilled, fast Maple Leafs team that was rested. To get 3 out of 4 in that situation, I think the Flyers were happy with that. The way they talked about it, as deflating as that loss Saturday night can be, where you feel like you outplayed them and it goes 11-round shootout. As deflating as that is, they were actually pretty happy how they had played. Alain Vigneault was really happy with the result outside of not winning the game. So good response, but now they have to sustain it. They've been a little too up and down. They got to really show that they can sustain this style and play this consistently. And if they do that, then they'll be in most games.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. It's just I kind of think that it's been a process has been better than the results so far outside of the blowouts in Calgary and on the island and in Pittsburgh. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, I think they've been overall pretty happy. Alain Vigneault talked about it before Saturday's game that looking at 10-game chunks, and obviously they were 12 games in going into that game Saturday. They went over it with their analytical crew, with their staff, and they were overall pretty pleased. They think they're doing what they wanted to and what they wanted to implement, and they feel like they're getting the process has been good. The results haven't all been there, but they feel pretty confident that if they can build on this, keep it going, that they're going to win more games than they lose for sure.
If there is a concern, Jordan, I think it has to be in goal right now. Carter Hart has had a tough time, as many sophomore goalies have historically. And we know Brian Elliott can only play so many games because of, his injury history, his age. And he can be steady, but they really need Carter Hart to be kind of that 50-game starter. What's your sense of where he's at and how the coaches feel about bringing him along through this tough little stretch?
Definitely. I'm with you right there. I really thought that they wanted and hoped that Carter Hart could be a 50-game guy, and then Brian would be in the 30 range. Obviously, it hasn't shaken out that way yet. Carter had a really strong start. The 3 games were really, really strong, including a shutout. Then he's pulled in 2 of the next 3, and then even the game that he wasn't pulled, I believe he only saw 15 shots. Gave up a killer goal in the 3rd period against the Stars after he really didn't see much at all in the 2nd period. So that 3-game stretch, he didn't play a whole lot. And I think the sense is they really need to get him in a rhythm in games where he's seeing shots and he's feeling confident. He's a strong kid mentally. He really is. Like, that's not made up or anything. When you talk to him, he really is a focused 21-year-old that obviously worked with a mental skills coach, still does. He's a game-to-game guy. He's really mature for his age. But any goalie, no matter what, no matter who you are, you need to play, and you need to play to get confidence. I think he lost his confidence a little bit there for a stretch. But the good thing is he came back, played really well in New Jersey. It wasn't his best game. He didn't see the most shots, but made some timely saves in the 3rd. Obviously, he did well in the shootout. So I think that's going to help. Alain Vigneault talked about it today in practice that they have a stretch here where they think they're going to need both goalies, Brian Elliott to play 2, Carter Hart to play 2. So right now it's really looking like it even split because I think they feel really confident in Brian Elliott as well, and they want to get him games. But I really think if Carter can get on a run here and have a stretch of games where he's playing well and the schedule allows him to play more, they're going to start to slowly but surely lean towards him as the number 1 guy and have Brian there to compete and play and be ready. But I think for this team to really, like you said, to take the next step, they need consistent goaltending, and they really need it from the guy that's going to be here for the future. And if Carter can give that to them, if he can make timely saves to really allow them to play their system, they're going to be better off for it. But we haven't seen it yet. So it'll be important, especially this next game Tuesday against Carolina, to see how Carter plays because one really strong game could probably dictate that goalie tandem.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Speaking of another young player, Joel Farabee has played 7 games since initially not making the original cut. But, watch, I've been following the team myself for 50 years. So what I tend to do is I say, talk to me in January.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, but a negative is, now this may change because now he's with Giroux. He's getting 2/3 of his zone starts in the offensive zone. But the positive is he's generating a lot of high-quality chances, and he's only shooting 5.6%, which is about 5 or 6%, below the league average, I believe. So what do you think, A, how do you think he's doing? And B, how do you think the Flyers think he's doing?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, he's creating, grade A chances, really, really good chances. It seems like every game you look up, and he's got about 2 to 3 quality chances in high-danger areas where he's simply just the final thing he's just not doing is just putting the puck in the net, or his line mate isn't. The Flyers have been really pleased. I think there's a reason he's here. I'm sure the goal that he got, and it was a timely goal in New Jersey, really leaves some stress off of his shoulders. So it was good to see him put the puck in the net. But really, I think overall, you just want to see the chances, and the chances have been really quality ones. He's creating. There's a reason I think he moved to the top line Saturday night to play with Claude Giroux and James Bendry. It's because he earned it, and they feel he's a guy that's going to complement those two. He's going to create chances, and he can finish. He's a strategic goal scorer that's eventually, if he goes a little bit of a stretch where he's not putting the puck in the net, that's going to turn because he's a goal scorer. He's a guy that can put the puck in the net. And the team, I think, has definitely seen that. They've been pleased. And we saw that a little bit in the preseason where, he was doing a lot of positive things. And the final thing he wasn't doing was just putting the puck actually in the net. He's helped them offensively, defensively. He helps in both ends of the rink. He skates. He's consistent. So he's doing a lot of the things that I think Alain Vigneault wants. And he hasn't done anything that's going to get him out of the lineup or had the Flyers think twice about, should he be here, should he not. Right now, I think he's here for good. I think he's really going to have to taper off to have them think about should he be here for good. I think he's helping them offensively.
Yeah, well, certainly before he broke through against the Devils, he led the league in goals called back. But that was crazy in that Chicago game. We were talking about that. But before I go further with a couple more I have, Chef or Dan, do you have any for Jordan tonight?
Question being, we obviously see that like Fletcher and AV are definitely not afraid to make moves, or they're not going to take. Seems like they're not going to take any crap like it was under the Hextall and Hextall era. So like, what I'm leaning to, are we in a countdown to like a major shakeup if the Flyers are still like that 500 team that we've seen the last? I mean, you tweeted out earlier today like. With the starts to October, and it's basically been around 500 for the last 7 years almost. So are we going to see something big coming if this doesn't happen, and what does that entail?
Yeah, I think it's been refreshing to see changes. I feel like obviously in the previous regime, there was they were always apprehensive to change things, and it was always like, no, we're going to trust what we're doing, trust this, trust that. It's going to turn, and it never did. So it's been nice to see both Alain Vigneault and Chuck Fletcher be open to change, be open to trying things. So that's been a positive. I do think they will be patient, though, in the sense that they've been happy with the process so far. It's as frustrating as that record is to look at October, and they really have been just mediocre in October over the past, I think, 7 seasons. Right. And that's frustrating for fans. But I think that previous 6-year stretch, that was the same for the most part, the same front office, the same coaching staff, the kind of the Flyer way. This is a new group, and I think they're realizing that the results were similar to past Octobers, but they feel like the process has been different. They have some new faces as well. I think they have a new style. Obviously, Alain Vigneault's incorporating his system. So while the results were similar, I think they really are happy with the process. So they're going to stick with that, but. Yeah, absolutely. I think if 2-3 months in, if they're not where they want to be, again, they don't really have any real personal ties to a lot of the guys that are here, and they're not going to be scared to look to shake things up. I think Chuck Fletcher will be when the trade deadline does come. It feels like we're a little while away from that, but when it does come, he's not going to be afraid to listen and to make calls. I think we could see a number of things happen. Because, again, they do have some assets. They want to compete. Chuck Fletcher was brought in to take them from one tier to the next. That he wasn't brought in to kind of sit back and sit on his hands. I think he felt like the offseason was very active, and they made subtle changes to kind of push this forward. And, yeah, if they don't see results maybe in 2-3 months, that's when I think we could start seeing some more moves, and maybe the head coach trying different things and challenging more guys. But right now, I think overall they've been pleased with things. But that can certainly change, as we've seen.
Yeah, no doubt. Jordan, the Flyers have a little situation, if you want to call it that, at center. Nolan Patrick's out for an indeterminate amount of time with a migraine syndrome. You never know when he's coming back. Scott Lawton, who's kind of more of a winger anyway these days, is out for a month with a broken hand. And then we have apparently revealed today Sean Couturier is not battling a hand or a wrist problem, but he's got a bad shoulder, if we are to believe AV. So, and of course we have Claude Giroux playing center when he's really a winger at this stage of his career. I guess the question becomes, do the Flyers need a solution at center? And is there one in-house Or, yeah, there's kind of one in-house, but maybe we want to wait a little bit more. What do you think is going to shake out there? Because that could be a looming problem. Because outside of Kevin Hayes, who's been a godsend, I guess, it's a potential big problem area for their playoff hopes.
Yeah, it can be a problem. You're right. It's a shame. You really thought when they got Kevin Hayes, and this was before we actually had known about Nolan Patrick, not only his diagnosis, but that he wasn't going to start training camp. Before we had known that, you're really thinking they look, for the first time in a little while, they look really deep at center. Yeah, and then the diagnosis comes out that he has a migraine disorder. Then just like you said, it makes Kevin Hayes look like godsend because, gosh, if they didn't go out and add Kevin Hayes, who cares if they even overpaid him a little bit at this point? They really, really needed him now. And I do think it's a little troubling. I think Claude Giroux's not playing at the position that he really prefers. He has said he thinks at this stage of his career he's better on the wing. I think deep down he misses playing with Sean Couturier a little bit. And then after Kevin Hayes, it really tapers off a little bit. And that's the crazy thing. There's just a ton of unknown with Nolan Patrick. We don't really have a timetable. He's been called week to week, but then he goes from practicing in non-contact to missing the last 2 practices and simply just doing his solo work that he was doing during training camp in the preseason. So you really don't know what's going to happen there. And that really gives me a gut feel that Morgan Frost isn't that far away. They are going to be cautious in bringing him up and how they talk about him. Chuck Fletcher mentioned that, he has some swings in his performance like any other 20-year-old first-year pro, that there's times where he's playing with great pace and he's good in coverage and he's good away from the puck. And then there's times where he lacks that a little bit. But if he's scoring and he's putting up a 7-game point streak and he's the Phantom's best player, and then all of a sudden you still don't have Nolan Patrick, Claude Giroux still playing center when you probably want to play him on the wing. Scott Lawton, they even said they like him better on the wing. They think he's better suited there and he can help them more on the wing. And it just tells me that Morgan Frost might not be that far away because we've already seen them try just about everything. They called up Carson Turinsky, sent him down, then he's back. Connor Bunneman started with Turinsky on the roster, then he was sent down.
Right.
Yermin Rubtsov comes up, Mike Alvarobe. They're trying everything. And if Frost is putting up points and he's playing well, I think they're going to give that a shot. And my gut also tells me that they might want to give him a shot and see how he does. Because then if he looks like he's undermanned and he's not ready to play in the NHL and he can't play that grind and help them in all areas, then maybe they make much greater decisions to add depth down the middle. And that could come, by the trade deadline or ahead of the trade deadline, where maybe they use some of their assets to help that depth at center and to find more scoring. So that might tell me they can call up maybe Morgan Frost, give him a shot if he takes the bull by the horns, and maybe they don't have to go outside. But if he doesn't, and they don't see anyone really seize hold of that of a bottom 6 role or help this team produce offensively, then yeah, maybe they need to look externally and start using some of the assets. And yeah, well, we're gonna have to wait and see. But I think November could be really telling. It's a busy month. They have 16 games, I believe, in this month.
Yeah.
And a 2-month range is when you really might know where a team is going, and if it needs help or if it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I could give him a 9-game trial. Of course, we all know that playing that 10th game for that rookie puts him into the entry-level contract slot, and that's certainly a big decision for this team going forward. But
right.
Dan, did you have anything?
Well, my lone question is, what do you think happens when Sam Morin's conditioning stint is over? I mean, they have 8 defensemen on the roster right now. Phil Myers, for the most part, looks like he can hang with the NHL. How do you think this situation gets solved?
Great question. It's such a precarious situation with him. I think they might carry 8 defensemen. Obviously, he's on the roster, but the conditioning stint, he's still on the roster. He counts against the cap. I think they might try to sneak him through waivers, and at this point, maybe he gets through, because you would hate to have him up here and just not playing. He's just, he's a 6'6" defenseman that needs to play. He's got to play to see for them to see who he is, and to have him be a 7th or 8th doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then you try to sneak him through waivers, and maybe a team looks at that at that upside and says, yeah, you know what, we'll take a chance with him, because at the end of the day, they're gonna, outside teams probably know who he is. They've probably scouted him, and they see a 2013 first round pick with size and potential, and maybe they'll gamble. So I think they're really hesitant to maybe try to put him on waivers. I really don't have a sense of what they're going to do there. Chuck Fletcher made a joke that he likes that Alain Vigneault actually likes to carry 8D sometimes because it really helps with practice. But they're going to have a tough decision there because, yeah, Sam Moran is if they carry 8D, then he's taking up a roster spot. He's taking up cap space. If they can sneak him through waivers, it only helps Moran and it only helps them. But I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do yet. I think at the end of the day, they might have to try to sneak one of their defensemen through waivers and just hope for the best, because carrying 8D just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for either party.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Jordan, I just was looking at the team going into the year, and I was wondering, we're only 13 games in, but are there any early surprises or any players that kind of have caught your eye as saying, hey, you know what, this guy's doing a lot better, even if it's just an improvement in one area, something that you've made a mental note of that you wanted the fans to know about, maybe one or two players if they even qualify?
Sure. I think for me, James Van Riemsdyk, I thought his 200-foot play has been some of the best I've ever seen. I don't know if that's, the new coaching staff that's really kicking, not kicking the veterans in the butt, but maybe telling them like, hey, our style is we want to wear opponents down, and it's not just flashy east-west play or kind of coasting through the zones. It's 200-foot play. We're going to create offense by dumping the puck in and really, really playing hard. And I think JVR has been some of the best I've seen from him in terms of 200-foot play, working hard, creating offense not just around the net, but working along the boards. And sometimes he just looks like he can be a nightmare to play against. I never thought he'd be that type of player. The way he uses his body now along the boards to kind of protect the puck, create possession, and then everyone can kind of, the D can pinch a little bit. That's really caught my eye. And I think it's a shame that some of his hard work didn't result in goals and points early in the season, but I think slowly but surely we're starting to see the production pay off. I think it's only a matter of time before he's going to go on one of his, notorious stretches where seems like he's just scoring everything, because I've seen a much different player in the 200-foot sense. And then I think this is kind of maybe a no-brainer, but Oscar Lindblom just been, that guy's on pace, I think, to score, 35, 40 goals. Now that's probably not going to happen, but I thought that's just been a pleasant surprise given what we saw him play under the previous coaching staff, where he was only playing around 11 minutes. Gosh, he even was a healthy scratch in Dave Haxtell's final game, I think, for Yuri Litera. And that,
yeah, famous
just
moment.
That's nonsense. We're seeing what he can do when he's around some talented guys, and the coaches have just absolutely raved about him from everything that he does, in the sense that he can help on the PK, he can play power play, he's an excellent 5-on-5 player. And the Flyers really needed some of their young players to not just be pieces, but become players. It's a shame, because I thought the past 2 years, especially 2017-18, they got career years from a lot of guys, and it just didn't translate into anything. They obviously had a tough matchup with the Penguins in the first round.
Yeah.
But they really needed some of their young guys that they drafted and brought up and allowed these kids to play at younger ages to really become players. And it's been refreshing to see Oscar Lindblom look like he's becoming a player. Same with Travis Konechny. I think that's been massive. I think if those two guys, who are only 23 and 22 respectively, if they don't take big steps so far, this team could actually not be 6-5-2. They could be in much different shape. So those two, especially Oscar Lindblom, I think have been really, really refreshing to see them play the way they are.
Yeah, absolutely. On the negative side of the ledger, it's easy for fans to come up with guys that maybe aren't cutting it, but with a keener eye and a more more educated sense of what the coaches think and what your colleagues think in the punditry class, maybe who's fallen short of expectations a little bit.
That's a really good question, because let's be honest, they're 6-5-2. It's not like they're taking the league by storm. So as much as we want to talk about the process being good, they eventually need to win games. As far as underwhelming, maybe it's a tough one to say, but Tyler Pitlick, maybe. I think he had a chance, and it's a shame because he wasn't healthy for training camp. He really didn't have a camp much at all. He's coming into a new room, new coaching staff. He doesn't have the camp, and all of a sudden now he's kind of fighting for playing time and even fighting to suit up. So I think that was a guy that maybe could have really bolstered your third or fourth line if things went right for him. He talked about maybe, he believes he can score 15 goals, but we're just not seeing that yet. If he can get his feet wet a little bit more and get his legs underneath him when he's really going north-south and really helping them on their PK, I think he could be an everyday guy. But right now it's clear as day that he's fighting just to suit up with Chris Stewart. And I think when they acquired Tyler Pitlick, they were hoping for a little bit more. But he had some unfortunate breaks. Obviously, the wrist thing happened again. So I think he's been a little underwhelming. And then I think some of their defense, I thought their defensive corps was going to be like a make or break group to this team. Chuck Fletcher even said it in June that he thought the strength of the team was their young D. And obviously defensemen can really help in Alain Vigneault's system. They really allow a lot of freedom for that. And unfortunately, we haven't seen Shane Gostisbehere be the player that he once was. Alain Vigneault even said today that they really pinned him as their power play guy coming into this season, and they want to see more. They haven't seen it, and he's lost his role in the top unit. Things can change, but right now he's lost that role because he simply didn't produce like he had been. Same with Travis Sanheim. Really good kid, just like Shane. Works hard, but hasn't really done, I think, what they expected him to do, coming off a real promising season.
Yeah.
So as promising as some of the forwards have been, especially some of the younger guys, they just haven't gotten it from the defense. It's just not consistent. One game, you're blown away by the way they can help offensively, the way they play in one-on-ones. And then some games are just making really poor decisions. They're mishandling the puck, and then it's just a really bad breakdown. And if I can mention one more defenseman, Justin Braun, I think. He's not asked to help at all offensively. He's simply asked to be strong defensively, kill a play when he can. And
right.
I think we're seeing a 32-year-old that's just not as quick and not as mobile as he used to be. He's not a mobile guy to begin with, and I think we're seeing when the Flyers are playing a really skilled offensive team that's fast, there can be some ugly breakdowns. And he's been on the bad luck side on some plays. It seems like every single time he's on the ice, the opposition's finishing a play. But I think we expected more of him. I think we expected him to be a positive player right now. He's not even close to that. But he's a competitive guy, a competitor. I think can help with his stick. But unfortunately, he's been on the negative side as well. So I think it's really you're really going to look at the defense. I think they've fallen short of expectations so far. But it is early, and there's a lot of talent there and a lot of upside. But it's going to be up to them to reach it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more for Jordan, but Chef, did you have one?
Yeah, just to piggyback that whole Ghost and Braun thing. They seemed in preseason, to have a really good chemistry, and they played well together. It seemed like this season now they never got back together or whatever. I thought that both their styles were like a better complement to each other, but it just doesn't pan out as a pair for them. Is anything that you saw that might be the reason for that?
It was really interesting when we saw the D pairs kind of gel in the preseason, and then right before the opener, they kind of changed it all up, and I think everyone was kind of disappointed in that. They put Ghost and Braun back together recently, and I think they're looking, and I thought so too. I thought it was both their styles were going to complement each other. Braun's a stay-at-home guy that is going to make the simple pass and kind of be like the insurance policy for Gostisbehere to kind of play freely and play his game. Let Shane get the puck up ice. Let Braun kind of be his help. So they've been back together, I believe, the past 2 games. Haven't really seen it click yet. Braun's had a really, really tough time in one-on-one battles and getting beat, and it's leading to goals. Then, it puts even more pressure on Ghost to play in the defensive zone. And Ghost just hasn't really looked like the same player just yet. It's, I feel like when he was really going well, you were seeing him just kind of dazzle on the ice. He was, deking players, and it's just not there. He's having a tough time even with the puck. And until we see those two kind of both – when – I'll say this. When Justin Braun's not doing what he can, which is kill plays and plays in the defensive zone real fast and then get the puck going north again, and then when Shane Gostisbehere isn't making plays offensively and keeping the puck in the offensive zone and creating grade A chances, then that pair can be exposed. And I think that's what we've seen over the past 2 games, and I think it's what we've seen even when they're not together. But I want to give that pair some time. I hope right now they're sticking with it because I think Niskanen and Ivan Provorov have been excellent together for the most part. Mm-hmm. They've helped each other. I like Philip Myers and Travis Sanheim together. They played together with the Phantoms for a while. I think their games kind of complement each other as well. So we're going to see it together some more, and I'm thinking we'll get some positive results out of it. But so far, it started out real promising in the preseason, and they've barely even played together, and then when they have, it just hasn't clicked yet. But I think we're going to see the Flyers give it some time and see what can come from it.
Yeah, it's been of a tire fire in many ways. So this is the last one from me, Jordan. The Flyers play a back-to-back the 29th and 30th of this month, Detroit and Montreal. They come out of that game, and they're a 500 team. It's December 1st. Mm-hmm. What do you think the Flyers are thinking at that point, and what do you think could change?
It's an excellent question. I do think they will lean on the side of patience just because, again, this is what they put together. When a GM when he's coming in, and I know he didn't Chuck Fletcher didn't construct this entire roster, but he did add some important pieces, and that may have him thinking more patience than action because he's going to, he's a knowledgeable hockey person. He's been in the game. I think he's been in hockey front offices since 1993. So he might not overreact to 2 months. But they are going to try things. And Alain Vigneault is also an experienced coach. I look back at some of his track records. Some of his best teams actually started pretty slowly through the first month, and it kind of leaked into November. So I think they'll be patient, but I don't know if they'll do anything externally, but I think they will look continually internally at what they can do and who's going to help, whether that's making, more roster moves, funneling more players from Lehigh up, switching up lines. I don't think Alain Vigneault is going to be scared to really try some bold things within his forward groups, even in his D pairs. I think we've already seen that a little bit. Jacob Voracek's on the third line right now.
Right.
And Joel Farabee, a 19-year-old's on the first line. I think that kind of speaks volumes that he's going to try things. He's not going to care about the past. He's going to see what works. As for Chuck Fletcher, I think he's going to continue to tap into Lehigh Valley, give kids chances, let the kids play, and I think that's a positive. I think they're going to wait a little bit later into December, into January, and then I think we'll really, really know maybe what this team is. And then I think Chuck Fletcher could start listening a little bit more and, start maybe thinking external solutions, because I don't think he's going to shy away from that. I just don't know how early he's going to do it. I think they're going to give this some time, see how they can turn things around. And heck, if they're around 500 at the end of November, I think that'll be a lot better than what they were last season. So I think they'll wait it out, but I think the later it goes, maybe past November, into December, maybe near the holiday break and then the bye, they'll be thinking long and hard about maybe starting to use their assets and thinking of outside solutions.
Gotcha. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Where can people find your work, and where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you guys for having me. You guys probably didn't know, but I actually listen to the show a lot. Really enjoy it. You guys are always on, which I think is awesome. So I always enjoy your perspective. So thanks for having me. And
you're welcome.
You can find me on Twitter at jhallmbcs. And you can find some of my written work on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com on our Flyers page. So You can find my stuff there, and always appreciate you guys sharing content, reading content, and also talking about it. I think it's great and it's fun. So thank you guys.
No problem. And say hello to Dan's favorite, Taryn Hatcher. You had that little moment last year where you had like a funny wink or face at her, and everybody kind of freaked out, not knowing you guys like work together. Duh. It
was the funniest thing. Yeah, I think I went from the locker room to Dave Haxtell. Or no, I'm sorry. When was that? I'm trying to remember if Dave Haxtell was still here, Scott Gordon. But anyway, I go to the head coach. I walk down the hallway and go to the head coach availability. After we listened to the head coach, all of a sudden I look at my phone and my Twitter notifications were just blowing up. Like, you get a decent amount of notifications if you tweet a few things, but like nothing like this. And what do I know? I look at my phone and I see someone grabbed a video of me making a face at Terrence. So I don't think I'll ever live that down. I still get friends that joke with me about it. Even my coworkers do. But I think the outside world didn't really know that we're coworkers and good friends, and just had a funny moment there. So
yeah, I think people need to chill,
Yeah, exactly. And I get it. It's social media. If a funny face or anything happens, it's going to be blasted out probably without any context. So I understood it. I tried to keep it on the low as much as I could, but I knew people would have some fun with it. So I still laugh about it to this day, and Taryn does too. So it's all fun.
That's cool. That's cool. Jordan, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you having me.
All right, you take care.
Take care.
Right. All right. Had chance. Little lighthearted moment there at the end. That was one of the highlights from last year's season, the way the Flyers played. But Dan, any comments about some of the things Jordan had to say, especially with regard to the way AV and Chuck Fletcher are looking at this thing?
No, not really. I like what he had to say. I think, again, I'm going back with I really, really like what I've seen out of AV and Fletcher. And I think that these two are going to be the duo that carry this team past further than anything Ron Hextall ever could have. So, it's a process, and I've always said that this is the quote-unquote real transition year that we were expecting, and there's going to be some highs and lows, and we've seen a little bit of both early on here. So I think the player assessment will continue. They've got a couple more people down with the Phantoms I'm sure they're going to take a look at, and once the trade deadline comes in the summer again, and sure they'll make some moves, and next year will probably be the legitimate season where they put their pedal to the metal here and start trying to win a cup.
Yeah, I think this could be that. I think this might be a year where they don't make the playoffs. I mean, I thought when we came into the season they were incomplete. There were too many questions. Some of those questions have reared their ugly heads already, and then you add the injury issues, and it seems to be, what the situation is. But, Chef, to what Dan had to say, and Jordan as well, AV called out veterans like Drew and Jake, and, saying, we need more from them. And then, of course, Mike Zielski wrote a column that, people took where he kind of blamed those two guys for like the last 7 years, it seemed like.
That's a lot. I mean, you got to spread it. There was a lot of people to blame over the last 7 years, but we'll just say this. I like Dan said, I like AV. I like the way he's handling things. I like the way Fletcher's not afraid to bring the kids up. Yeah, there's a little bit of caution here because we saw, I guess, I'm a little apprehensive because I always knew Oscar Lindblom could be a really good player. I took a heat from that from like other people. I knew he could be a very good player. And when he was brought up and then sent down, and then the 2 years prior, it kind of like, I don't know if it stunted his growth. I realized that was a different core of coaches, and the coaching staff this year is obviously more organized and more focused on what they want, and they, by all accounts, what you're hearing from the players is they communicate better. They tell you exactly what they want. This is what you should do if he goes here, and I think that's a huge plus. So that makes me a little bit happier about what he said about Morgan Frost. So Jordan said, that yes, you could see him sooner than later or whatever. So I'm a little apprehensive at the same time. I don't want it to stun his development. I know he's on fire now, and people are like saying he's too good for where he's at right now. I'm like, you know what? He's a young kid. He swings like a pendulum. He's only 20 years old. Let it go back and forth. We don't want him to come up here, regress, and not get the playing minutes. Like, it happens. You got to win games too. So I'm a little happy from what I heard, and a little optimistic, let's just say.
Yeah, he's on a point streak right now, and he seems to be figuring out offensively. But the thing about Morgan Frost, and I know Bill Meltzer had an extended piece at his HB column today. He really broke it down. I mean, Dan and I were kind of going back and forth about this too good for the AHL stuff. I mean, I heard that said about the Reddit was tweeted about Oscar Lindblom, and it turned out to be true. I've heard it said about Jordan Wheel. I don't have to comment any further. But I mean, the thing is, if you're going to play center in the National Hockey League, there's certain things that you can't F up. And
yes.
I let this kid score great. What happens, though, if he's not scoring? Does that mean he's not going to do his job defensively? That he's not going to work well in the neutral zone? He's not going to be in the right position? He's going to sulk? I mean, they have to go through this. Let these kids develop. It really does make a difference. And there's just so many people on Twitter who follow these prospects, and it's like, they just see points and stats. And it's like they're not there watching the player and interacting with the coaches and going through the process of becoming a professional and then becoming an NHL player.
Yeah, there's more to it. And he's on a 7-game point streak right now, and it's fantastic and all. But I just don't think his game is there. Now, I've been at all the Phantoms Homes games thus far, with the exception of one, and he has taken an extreme leap in the past month alone. I mean, Frost looks so much better now than he did, at the beginning of the season. He looked lost out there.
Definitely.
And that's great to see, and that he's growing. But, just because he's on a 7-game point streak, whatever it is at the moment, that doesn't mean you call him up, And you got it's not going to hurt him staying in the AHL for another couple months. Even the rest of the season, it's just not going to hurt. You have things to do. If you put him up, if he was called up tomorrow, he's going to see some heavy minutes with the Flyers. Especially if they put Giroux on wing, or if Couturier is hurt. He's going to be relied on heavily. And Farabee, for the most part, has been able to make the leap, but he's playing wing. Centers do have a little bit more responsibility.
Absolutely.
And it's about letting him grow at his own pace. And he's great. He's scoring. He's totally looking much better than he did earlier. And, I mean, if he keeps growing at this pace, in a month from now, he may be ready. But at this point in time, leaving him down there to marinate a little longer is not going to hurt anybody.
No, I agree. The thing the Flyers used to do, a kid would get on a roll. The Flyers would have an injury. They call him up. He comes out. He looks like he's ready. He gets a goal here. Then another couple weeks goes by, and then the guy just kind of disappears, and then he just gets sent down. And then they have that yo-yo effect of calling guys up, sending them down. I just don't want. It is better for a guy to have continuous service instead of having this up and down between here and Lehigh Valley. That's just my feeling, and So one thing we didn't touch on, I just wanted to, for the fans out there, if you're wondering, if you wanted numbers that really reflect positively about where the Flyers are at, look at the special teams. The Flyers ranked 8th in the NHL after the last game, with a 23.5% power play percentage success rate. And that's, last year at this time it was 17.1. And the PK ranks 12th at 82.5. 80% is like the new Mendoza line for a PK. Last year they were ranked 26th at 78.5%. 78 to 82.5, it doesn't sound like a lot. It is a lot. That's how you lose games. So, and one of the other things, and the last thing we're going to touch on tonight before we just do an upcoming schedule review, the power play, they moved Giroux, Chef, over to the usual spot on the left side by the half boards in the offensive zone. But I'm hearing, and we've noticed, that is not permanent. I think the Flyers, kind of like NFL offensive formations, are giving different looks on the power play. It's something we talked about in previous shows. Mm-hmm. So I guess what we're trying to put across is that just because you see something one game or within one game, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to come back with in terms of formation. Personnel-wise, with Provorov, that's something different.
Yeah, no, I kind of like it. In the past couple years, the special teams have been like horrible and stale. Let's just face it. I knew that what they were going to do when they got on the power play. I mean, when you can pick it out from Drew's going to go here and there. I think it's really, really good. I mean, you see it a lot in football that you'll have the same personnel on the field, and they'll even have the same formation, but it'll be a different set play coming out of that formation. And I think, that can translate to hockey too as well, but we haven't seen that. I mean, we've seen it's always been try to pass over or cross ice pass to Giroux for the one timer and bang, and to other teams' credit, they can look at the video just like we can, and they go, hey, this is what they're going to do if they go on a power play. And I think it exposed the Flyers special teams that they were a 1-2 trick pony, and that was it. They only had a couple plays in their repertoire. So now I like to see that. I like that. I see that their playbook is different, and you're getting different looks, giving even a better different player on the point now. I think that's a fresh new look. That's obviously going to have a different mindset and leave you more options.
Yeah, I think Provorov, even though I think he's kind of putrid on the power play, one thing he's doing, he's walking the line better than Gostisbehere is, and he's getting pucks on net. And in a power play, man advantage situation, you want pucks at the goaltender's feet because it creates all kind of opportunities. You're going to outnumber teams in front of the net. At least get the puck on net instead of shooting 100 miles an hour. It's 5 feet wide, and then you have to start the play all over again, or he gets it blocked, and it's just not. Shane Gostisbehere is just not the same guy. I don't know if the Flyers have any answer, if he has any answers. Let's just say I'd keep an eye on him. But the Flyers' power play is giving many different looks, and I think that's definitely a good thing, like Chef is saying here. So, man, we're coming to another show, and at the end of every show, I swear, gents, I mean, I hope I didn't forget this. I hope I didn't forget that. That's just my paranoia. Dan, did I forget anything tonight?
I don't think so.
I hope not. We want to give you an action-packed show. But, hey, let's wrap it up. I want to talk about the upcoming schedule. And we're going to be back. I think it's the 18th, which is a Monday. So the Flyers are going to play a total, I think, 7 games between now and then. So tomorrow versus Carolina at home. Then they host Montreal on Thursday. They go to Toronto this Saturday. And back-to-back Toronto and at Boston. Oh, man, that's rough. Then they host Washington on the 13th. Then another back-to-back. Friday, Saturday at Ottawa, at home against the Islanders. I think they owe them a beatdown. But after playing Boston and Toronto back-to-back, and then after that having to play Washington, I don't know if they have a beatdown in store. I don't know. We'll be back. I think it's going to be the 18th. But before that, I got one last thing. 97.5, The Fanatic. Dopes.
Yeah.
Morons. Idiots. Let go of their assistant program manager and co-host of the morning show with Anthony Gargano, who I think is kind of played out on radio, but that's another story. He gets let go. He had no clue. He had written an article about Carter Hart. I think you should check it out on Jason's timeline. Jason Myrtetus is probably the best overall hockey personality that was left on terrestrial radio. and I think he's a supremely talented guy. He's one of the few guys I can just say unreservedly he's good, great at what he does, and I hope he lands on his feet because that is a steaming pile of BS. There are so many people in this town that are stealing money on talk radio. There's that clown on 94 at 6 o'clock. His name, look, Gili, what is that? I don't know what he is. And then there's that lazy on 97.5. If you play trivia, the guy's just been mailing it in for 5 years. Whatever. Don't get me started. Look, we got started because talk radio is turned to excrement, but still, Jason's a good one. Good luck, brother. And we'll get Jason on the show one time. So I just wanted to leave you with that. Dan, Brotherly Pod and Puck, National Pod and Puck, where can people catch you on Twitter and some of your work?
Well, you can find me at Dan the Flyer Fan, at Brotherly Puck, at Brotherly_Pod, at National Puck, and at National Podnet. I'll be back on Brotherly Pod on Wednesday night. All the co-hosts coming on the same show, Anthony DeMarco, Angry Jim, Mike Acito, Bobby Thomas, and myself all sit down for an episode. So that one will be fun. Make sure to listen to that one.
Yeah, check that out. You definitely want to be there. And, Dan's been telling me I got to improve my performance a little bit here on O&B so I can earn my way back onto a Brotherly podcast. So I'm working hard. And, hopefully I cut the mustard.
To send them down to the minors.
Yeah.
On a conditioning stint.
Yeah. Well, that's why I did the Disciples of Ed podcast, and that's out there. Check those guys on the ANY podcast. Always next year. That's what that stands for. We'll have Rob on, Radio Rob on probably next show or the show after that. But Chef, you're at Steam Pub in Southampton. Where can people check you out on Twitter?
Sure, you can catch me at Chef to the Left B at Twitter and Chef at Steam Pub on Facebook, and you can ask questions about food. We run daily specials every day. There's a different food special every week. We have weekly specials, and right now we have seasonal fall specials. So we always got a lot going on over there. So stop in, say hi, and I'll come out and maybe buy you an appetizer. How about that?
Yeah. That's one of those places you walk in, you want to have a beer right away. So. And it's great. Then after you have a beer or two, you're like, hey, you know what? This food looks really good. You see, compared to some of these other places, this food is very well prepared. So check out Steam Pub. What is the address?
606 2nd Street Pike, Southampton, PA. 80%, 90% scratch kitchen, baby. Cheesesteak spring rolls rock.
Okay, that makes me itch. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, I'm Isaiah. ISAIAH _520, Isaiah _520 if you want to yell at me for tonight's show. And of course, the O&B Puckcast can be followed on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page too. Don't forget that. We just post kind of the same stuff, but it's at O&B Puck on Twitter, the O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puck. And of course, we're on so many platforms. If you could be so kind as to rate and subscribe to the O&B Puckcast on your favorite platform, particularly, it used to be iTunes, they call it Apple Podcasts now, what have you. We're on iHeart, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify is a real hot one right now. And we also have our own YouTube channel. Check it out. Give us a rating. Give us some feedback. We appreciate it. Those 5-star ratings are really appreciated. And with that, we've come to an end to another O&B Puckcast. And until next time, everybody, take care.